My name is Emily. I don't remember exactly when I first covered Mom's electric bill. Maybe it was that winter when I was 27, the night the old furnace in her house suddenly gave out, right as the temperature dropped below 10 degrees Fahrenheit. She called me sometime after 10 p.m., her voice shaking. "It's freezing. I think they cut the power." I don't know what to do. I was in the middle of a virtual meeting with a client in California, but I still opened my banking app and immediately transferred $236 to her account with a single message: "It's paid. Just get some sleep." Since then, it became routine. Every fall I covered roof maintenance. Every summer I paid for a new air conditioner. And every time my brother Josh lost his job or was taking a break to figure things out, I wired a few $100s to help tide him over. Nobody asked me to, but nobody said thank you either. At some point, even my mother Carol seemed to consider my support a duty. Each month she forwarded me hospital invoices for Uncle Gerald, her cousin living with her after a stroke, with a note: "See what you can do." No greeting. No small talk. I used to think I could bear it. That if I stayed patient, kind enough, one day they'd see what I'd been doing all along. But some truths refused to stay hidden. Last Christmas, I spent a total of $4,800 on gifts, decorations, and plane tickets to fly the whole family out to a rental house in Colorado. My mom posted a photo on Facebook with the caption, "Josh planned another perfect family holiday. Thank you, son." Josh, the guy who only picked a music playlist and slept in every morning, I called her afterward. Just asked lightly, "You don't remember who paid for the trip this year?" She paused for a second, then answered plainly, "Well, you've always liked handling that kind of stuff. And Josh, he has a real talent for organizing." I don't see anything wrong with what I wrote. I didn't say anything. But in my mind, a boundary began to take shape. When my dad was alive, he used to say I was the beam holding everything up, not in a flattering way, but like I was the old porch post that everyone relied on, but no one thought to paint or treat for termites. They used to call me the easy one. I didn't crash my credit. I didn't get into trouble. I never filed complaints against anyone in the family. I was also the only one who sent $400 a month to help pay for Aunt Maureen's prescriptions, a woman I was never even close to. Sometimes I wonder if I suddenly stopped all of it, would anyone even notice, or would they just call Josh and say something's wrong with your sister? She didn't send money this week. 4 months ago, I got word that Mom had been hospitalized with high blood pressure. I dropped everything, caught the next flight out of San Diego, and arrived at the hospital around 2 a.m. Josh showed up an hour later, holding a coffee cup, hair a mess, wearing an old hoodie. When the doctor came out to discuss her condition, he glanced around and asked who's in charge of Mrs. Carroll's finances and medical decisions. Josh looked at me, then quickly replied, "That would be me." I turned stunned. "Excuse me." "Yeah, she put me in charge last year." "She said you were too busy." I looked at Mom. She didn't deny it. Didn't explain. Just pressed her lips together and turned toward the window. And in that moment, I understood they never truly saw me as essential. I was just a timely bank transfer, a backup plan, a shadow behind the golden sun they always adored. That dinner took place at my sister Olivia's house, out in the eastern suburbs of Boulder. It was one of those rare gatherings. Mom insisted everyone attend a family celebration to mark her release from the hospital. I booked a flight, found a hotel nearby, and brought the beef casserole Mom once called the most spot on flavor at her birthday 10 years ago. I arrived 10 minutes early. Olivia didn't answer the door. Her eldest daughter Sophie did, still holding her phone, speaking quickly, Mom setting the table. "You can leave the food in the kitchen." I stepped inside. The house was brightly lit, filled with the smell of roast meat and spicy sauce. I set my dish down on the counter, trying to shake the feeling that I'd walked into something already arranged without me in mind. In the dining room, it became obvious there were no seats for me or my son Dylan. 12 chairs. Enough for Olivia, her husband, Their two kids, Mom Josh and his new girlfriend, plus a few cousins from Dad's side. No extras. No folding chairs. Not even a booster seat for Dylan, even though I'd told them ahead of time. I hesitated, then asked quietly, "Is there a chair for Dylan?" Mom glanced around and shrugged. "He's little. He can sit on your lap. You used to do that when you were young." I squeezed Dylan's hand. He looked up at me without speaking, but his eyes understood. I dragged a chair from the hallway, tucked it beside the table, and lifted Dylan into it. No one said anything. No one seemed to notice. Olivia, wearing a champagne-colored silk dress, stood and raised her glass. "First, thank you all for being here. And a special shout-out to Josh, my super sweet baby brother, for helping Mom during her hospital, stay driving her around and handling everything. Mom, I got you a little something from my year-end bonus. It's not much, but enough for that purse you liked the other day." Mom lit up, touched. She took the envelope and said warmly, "My daughter always knows what I need." So thoughtful. No one mentioned that I'd paid Mom's entire hospital bill last month, almost $3,200, or that I sat in the ER with her for 18 hours straight on the day she was admitted. They forgot. Or pretended to. I stayed quiet, trying to finish the corn soup I'd made from scratch. When Olivia brought out the casserole I had brought, she glanced at it and gave a half smile. "Oh, Emily made this kind of old school, but a little variety's nice." A small chuckle came from Josh's end of the table. Mom picked up a bite, chewed, then set her fork down. "Maybe I'm just tired tonight. I can't really taste it." I forced a smile. Too tired to taste Mom's usual way of sidestepping when something didn't meet her expectations, even if she once raved it was better than any restaurant. I leaned down to wipe Dylan's mouth, hiding both my embarrassment and the chill crawling down the back of my neck. He whispered, "Mom, can we go home early?" I looked around the table. The faces laughing, chatting like Dylan and I were background props in a scene we weren't cast in. I kissed the top of his head. "Yeah, baby. We'll go after you finish eating." As we stood to leave, I heard Olivia call out, "Heading out already? You didn't stay for dessert." I turned and smiled. I think the sweetest dessert tonight is timely silence. I didn't wait for a response. I grabbed my bag, took Dylan's hand, and walked out. The night air was crisp against my face, cool but kinder than anything inside that house. And as the door shut behind me, I knew this wasn't the first time they'd diminished me. But it would be the last time I stayed quiet about it. I was gone for exactly 3 days. A short business trip to Seattle, meeting a new partner, finalizing a deal I'd chased for 3 months. I left Dylan with a trusted sitter, and I texted both Mom and Olivia clearly I'm traveling for work from Monday to Wednesday. I'll be back home Wednesday evening. No one replied. I was used to that. Wednesday, my flight back to Denver was delayed due to weather. I took a taxi straight to Mom's house in Littleton, where I'd been staying temporarily since breaking up with my ex. Mom had said just stay here and save money. There's a spare room. I paid for my own groceries, covered utilities, even contributed to her home insurance. But I was always careful because the house wasn't in my name. I pulled my suitcase onto the porch and froze. 2 large cardboard boxes sat at the door, taped shut. On top were my handbag, Dylan's backpack, and a small plastic bin of bathroom items. Everything we owned packed like a tidy eviction by a moving crew. I didn't understand. I thought maybe it was a mistake. I knocked. No answer. I called Mom. No response. I rang the bell 3 times until Olivia opened the door, her face stone cold. "Mom's resting. You should go." I stepped back. "What's going on? Mom doesn't want you living here anymore." We talked. Josh, Mom, and I agreed. I almost laughed. I don't remember being part of any meeting. Because you don't get a vote. You're just staying here. The house isn't yours. Mom says it's stressful. Your presence makes the house feel heavy. I looked directly at Olivia. I didn't see a sister, I saw someone who chose control over care. I asked slowly, so the whole family voted to kick me out of a house I helped pay for. She didn't answer. But her posture, her eyes avoiding mine, said everything. I pulled my suitcase off the porch. No one came out. No one explained. The door slammed shut behind me, firm and final, like they were afraid I might beg to stay. I sat on the steps. Night air stung my wrists. My phone buzzed. A text from Josh, "Don't be dramatic. Mom needs space. You'll be fine, you always are." I reread those last 3 words, "You'll be fine." They always knew I wouldn't scream, wouldn't explode, wouldn't fight. And that's exactly why they thought they could go this far. That night, I booked 2 nights at a hotel near the airport. I didn't cry. Dylan was already asleep in the taxi, still clutching the stuffed dinosaur I brought from Seattle. I laid him on the hotel bed, then sat by the window. Street lamps cast long shadows on the sidewalk. I opened my laptop, logged into my bank account. Just under $9,400 left, enough to last a few months if I budgeted carefully. But I knew I couldn't live temporary anymore. I needed a plan, something solid. Somewhere, no one could ever vote me out again. The next morning, I called Jill, a former colleague who once invited me to join her new firm as a financial manager. Back then, I'd declined. I thought I needed to stay close to Mom. But now, nothing was holding me back. "Jill, is that offer still open? If you can start next week, you'll have your own office. The team loved you after that first pitch meeting." For the first time in 3 days, I smiled. "I'm starting Monday." That afternoon, I left the hotel and moved into a small studio in Lakewood. It wasn't big. It wasn't fancy. But it was mine. I signed a 6-month lease, hung up my own curtains, organized my closet by hand. The first thing I placed on the shelf, a photo of Dylan and me on the beach, smiling under golden sunlight. I also reclaimed my privacy on every level. And that first night in my new place, I wrote on the whiteboard I hung on the wall, "No one can throw me out of what I've built for myself." That night, after Dylan had fallen asleep on the creaky spring bed of our cheap motel room off Alameda Avenue, I sat against the wall, the soft yellow lamp casting shadows across the stained ceiling. The old A/C unit hissed hot, dry air, steady and indifferent. I scrolled through old messages on my phone. Nothing from Mom. Not a single text asking where I was after being kicked out of the very house I helped maintain. Not one question mark. Not 1 ounce of concern. A new notification pinged suddenly. It startled me. It was from Josh. "Just 3 words, you doing okay?" I didn't respond. Not out of anger, but because something had finally clicked, something I'd never allowed myself to admit. They never wanted me there. It wasn't passive neglect, it was intentional. Every decision, every silence, every missed thank you was a brick in the wall, pushing me out, relegating me to the background of my own family. As a child, I thought being good meant being loved. As an adult, I believed carrying the weight would earn me respect. But some roles once given are never praised, only expected. I looked over at Dylan, his face calm under the dim light. He's the only one who's never treated me as a given. I remembered when he had a high fever and I stayed up all night with cool towels, then went to work the next morning like nothing happened. I remembered the way he called Mommy when nightmares chased him, and how his hugs made me feel like I truly existed in someone's eyes, whole and enough. But I also remembered what Olivia told me at dinner last year. Being a single mom doesn't excuse poor balance. We're all tired. I swallowed that like a stone back then. But now, in this bleach-scented motel room, I saw it clearly. I wasn't tired because I was a single mom. I was exhausted from trying to prove to people who never cared that I deserved to exist in their lives. I stood up, walked to my suitcase, and pulled out an old brown leather notebook. Inside, printed receipts tucked in like a quiet archive of sacrifice. A $600 roof repair for Mom. a $1,200 hospital bill for Josh when he slipped and had no insurance, a $450 credit card payment for Olivia, just a short-term loan, she said. I looked at them one by one like reading the closing arguments of my own silent trial. Then I tore them page by page, not out of rage. I simply didn't need proof anymore. What I did doesn't need to be validated, only released so I could stop imprisoning myself in moral debt no one intended to repay. The next morning, I woke early. Dylan was still asleep. I brewed motel coffee from the old machine by the hallway. It was bitter, but somehow better than the years I'd spent tasting shame for occupying space I paid for. I opened my laptop and logged into my private savings account, the one no one in my family knew about. Balance $19,780. What remained after 2 years of late-night freelance work. I wasn't using it for them anymore. This was my restart fund for me and my son. I sent the move-in confirmation for the apartment in Lakewood, the one I'd placed a deposit on. A space where I wouldn't need permission to stay, where no one could vote on whether I belonged. I also drafted my resignation letter to my old job, the same company where I once turned down a promotion, because Mom needed me close. I submitted applications to 3 new roles that matched my skill, experience, and worth. Then I opened Facebook, an account I barely used, usually just to post the occasional photo of Dylan. And I wrote a single sentence: if you're the only one who shows up in the storm, remember you don't need permission to stand in the sun. I didn't write it for them. I wrote it for me. That morning, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the background noise holding everything together. I felt like a woman standing in the light, faint maybe but fully her own. A light no one could switch off. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't just exist. I lived. Not waiting for approval, but truly finally living. 1 week after I moved into my new apartment in Lakewood, I received a message from Ruth, Mom's best friend since high school. I called her Aunt Ruth, though we shared no blood relation. The message was simple: if you have time, come by. I think there's something you need to see. I dropped by her house that Saturday afternoon while Dylan was playing Legos at a friend's. Her small home nestled quietly between faded lavender bushes, still carrying that warm southwestern charm I'd always loved. She brewed me a cup of ginger tea, then handed me a yellowed envelope, worn slightly torn at the edges. This is a photocopy I've kept since 2013. Your mom asked me to hold on to it during the house renovation, but no one ever came back for it. I found it while cleaning the cabinet last week, and thought maybe it's time it went to the right place. I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten will, signed by my mother, Carol Miller, along with 2 witnesses, notarized by a local law office. Date: May 2013. The contents were clear: I, Carol Ann Miller, in full ownership of all personal property and real estate at 44 Aurora Lane, along with all savings and investment shares held at First Bank, leave everything to my daughter Emily Rose Miller, on the condition that she provides care for me in the event of any medical emergency before my death. My hands tightened around the paper. That estate, the house, the savings, the investments, I had once been the named heir. But now everything was under Olivia's name. Mom said she had updated it and that I didn't need an inheritance anyway. But no one ever asked me. I looked up at Ruth. Are you sure this was the last version? She shook her head. I don't know if they changed it later, but I remember this clearly. Your mom wanted to be sure you had rights because you were the only one who stepped up after your dad passed. After that, I don't know what happened. I took the will home and set it on my desk. For hours I sat there, until finally I opened documents I'd avoided for years, thinking family shouldn't be treated like business. I logged into Mom's old tax account, the one I used to help her file online. The password hadn't changed. Her late cat's name, Milla 2020. I traced the records and discovered that in 2018, Mom transferred partial ownership of the Aurora Lane home to Olivia via a temporary asset proxy. Then, In 2020, Olivia filed paperwork to become sole owner, citing full responsibility for maintenance and care. That claim was false, because in 2020, I wired $14,300 to Mom's account for roof repairs and central air installation. I found the bank receipts emails with the contractor, and even the messages from Mom asking me to cover it. For now, I'll make note of it later. It was all still there. I just never thought I'd need to use it to defend myself. That night, I opened a new folder on my laptop titled Emily Truth Archive. Inside, I began collecting the photocopy of the will from Ruth, bank statements showing payments for home expenses, text messages requesting financial support from Mom and Olivia, utility bills and hospital invoices paid under my name. I wasn't angry. I was awake. Because for the first time in my life, I could see it plainly. My family hadn't just forgotten me, they had planned to erase me. From everything. Assets, responsibility, identity. And they had nearly succeeded. I didn't post about it. I didn't message Josh. I didn't call Olivia. Instead, I booked a consultation with an estate attorney, Nadia Green, the same woman who helped a friend of mine reclaim a fair inheritance from her in-laws. When Nadia finished reviewing my folder, she nodded slowly. Based on this original will, unless a legally notarized update exists, any asset transfers done without your consent may be invalid, especially if there's evidence of manipulation or breach of trust. I sat up straighter. "Are you ready to pursue this fully?" she asked. I didn't hesitate. They cut me out quietly. But I'm taking my voice back. And this time, no one erases me from the story. She slid the documents into a new envelope. I signed the retainer. Not for revenge, but to affirm one truth: the person they thought could be quietly forgotten was the only one who never truly left. I saw Olivia again in the one place she couldn't play the role of perfect sister, a courtroom in Jefferson County, under sterile lights and in front of the law. The hearing opened on a Tuesday morning. My attorney Nadia had filed a civil suit alleging unlawful asset transfer and familial breach of trust. Olivia arrived with her own lawyer, hair neatly pinned, cream blazer, crisp smile controlled. But her eyes never met mine. The judge asked the first question: does the defendant acknowledge altering the ownership structure of the estate without consent from all beneficiaries named in the 2013 will? Olivia's attorney immediately objected. That will is no longer valid. My client believes a revised version was created afterward. Nadia stepped forward, voice calm and sharp. Then please present that revised version to the court. None was produced. Because it didn't exist. Olivia bit her lip. Nadia continued the defense claims the home was transferred due to them covering all expenses related to repairs and care. We'd like to submit bank records, roofing, invoices, HVAC installation receipts, hospital bills, and tax payments, all paid by Emily Miller between 2019 and 2022. A stack of documents landed on the table. Unshakable. But we weren't done. I pulled out my phone and requested permission to play an audio recording. The judge nodded. Olivia's voice came through crisp and unmistakable. Mom said once Emily's name was on it, it'd be hard to change. But with me, things were more flexible. Emily always lands on her feet right then, my mother's voice low and firm. We should take care of it soon. Before she starts asking questions. Silence. Olivia went pale. Her lawyer looked down. I just sat still, hands folded, eyes steady. After a recess, the judge gave a temporary ruling. The court finds reasonable evidence of fiduciary misconduct, asset misrepresentation, and concealment of an original will. I hereby freeze all transactions related to the property at 44 Aurora Lane and order a broader civil inquiry. Temporary ownership is granted to the plaintiff, Emily Miller. As I left the courtroom, a few people nodded at me in quiet solidarity, but I knew this wasn't the end. That night, I uploaded a video to my personal YouTube channel where I'd previously shared basic finance tips. Title: I was kicked out of my family home, then I discovered the truth. I didn't name names. I didn't attack anyone. I simply shared I was the one quietly funding my family for 10 years. I was called dramatic for asking to be acknowledged. I believed staying silent would keep the peace. And then I was discarded like a stranger. I talked about the hidden will, the shady transfers, and what it felt like to live in a motel with a 6-year-old. I ended with this: if you're the only one sacrificing in silence, maybe you're being erased from the story you built. I expected nothing. By the next morning, the video had over 84,000 views. Comments flooded in, "I'm the third sister. Same thing happened to me. They count on us staying quiet, but you didn't." My mom changed the air behind my back, too. The silence hurt more than the betrayal. A week later, I was invited to speak on a podcast about justice and inheritance. My channel gained 15,000 subscribers in 4 days. I didn't flaunt a victory. I simply told the truth, and the support came from those who'd once been silenced, but never dared name it. After the second court delay, Olivia sent me a message. I didn't think it would go this far. "If you could just take the video down," I replied with one line. "If you'd thought of that before removing me from the will, there wouldn't be a video." I didn't do this to shame anyone. I did it for myself, for Dylan, and for everyone who's ever been pushed out of their own family's table. Because justice doesn't always come from a courtroom. Sometimes it begins the moment you say, "I was there," and I won't be silent anymore. I returned to the house on Aurora Lane on a quiet Sunday morning in mid-April. A soft breeze stirred the trees along the front yard, sunlight glinting off the glass in the entryway. The house looked the same, careful, still, and distant. No one greeted me. But the door was unlocked. I let myself in. I wasn't there to reclaim anything. I came for one thing: the old moss green armchair, the only piece of furniture I'd bought with my very first paycheck after college. Mom once said, "Sitting in it feels like coming home." Later, it ended up in the living room where Josh lounged watching TV and Olivia tossed her coat every time she visited. I placed my hand on the worn fabric, smoothed at the elbows, and gave it a light tug. The legs creaked faintly. I smiled. Still, the same, not glamorous, but faithful. Olivia came down the stairs as I was loading the chair into the back of my car. "What are you doing here?" I turned, my voice calm. "Taking back what's mine. Just this chair. You know, if the court," I raised a hand, cutting her off, "the court might order the return of the house, the assets, the shares. But I don't need them." She froze. I continued. "I didn't come to take anything back. I came to carry out what was mine all along. A chair. And peace." I pulled an envelope from my jacket. Inside was a blank check already signed. "Here's a check. If you or Mom ever feel like returning something, write in a number. Whatever you think kindness is worth. I'm not demanding anything. But from now on, I won't give first and hope to be acknowledged later." She didn't take it. She stepped back. Her face wasn't angry, just clouded in confusion, maybe guilt. "You're not doing this for revenge," I met her eyes. "I'm doing it for the truth. And I've got it now." As I drove away, the armchair secured in the back, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt light. No more tightness in my throat. No more waiting for an apology that would never come. Because I no longer needed it. That night, I brought the chair into my apartment. Dylan helped me wipe it down with a damp cloth. He didn't understand the whole story, but he was beaming. "Is this your chair, Mom? Yeah? The one I used to sit in when I read to you at 3. Can you tell the story again about the girl with the talking pen?" I sank into the chair, pulled Dylan onto my lap, and started reading. My voice steady. But in my head, I was writing a different chapter now. One without being cast out from the dinner table, without cheap motels, without needing permission just to exist. Only me, standing in the clarity of someone who knows her own worth. A week later, my mother called. Her voice was weak, tired, like even April's breeze made her bones ache. "Can you stop by, just for a bit?" I hesitated, but I went. Not because she was my mother, but because sometimes to truly move on, you have to be the one who closes the door. She was sitting in the kitchen under soft yellow light, her face older than I remembered. On the table sat the envelope I had given Olivia, still sealed. "I know I was wrong." I said nothing. "I just don't know how to fix it." I looked at her. "You don't need to fix it. Just don't repeat it." I stood and walked to the door. Before leaving, I turned back, not as a bitter daughter, but as a woman who had grown through more than anyone ever noticed. I don't need a house. I don't need an inheritance. I just needed to be seen as real in this family, not a shadow wiring money and fading away. That night I posted a new update on my YouTube channel. No mention of court decisions. No names. Just one line paired with a photo of the old armchair under a reading lamp. I didn't reclaim the house. I reclaimed a place to sit, breathe, and know I no longer need permission to stay. Peace doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes it only needs an old chair and someone who knows exactly when to stop walking back and how to walk forward on her own. Every morning I make coffee in the tiny white tiled kitchen of my Lakewood apartment, open the window to let sunlight in, and listen for the soft rustle of Dylan waking up in the next room. Sometimes he wanders out with his messy hair holding his favorite book and asks, "Can you read the part with the dragon again?" I smile, brush his hair back, and think maybe this is the kind of peace I once believed I didn't deserve. I no longer live under the weight of give first wait for recognition. I don't calculate who needs me today just to be considered family tomorrow. Josh's texts no longer stir anything in me. Olivia's silence no longer stings. I chose disconnection not to cut them off, but to preserve what mattered: myself. And my son. After the court hearing and the video that went unexpectedly viral, my quiet little YouTube channel, once filled with basic finance tips, became a refuge for those who'd once been disregarded by their own families. Hundreds of messages came in. "I was in your shoes, cut from the will just for being the daughter. My parents always said not to worry, then left everything to my brother. Your story gave me the courage to finally speak to my mother for the first time." I began posting regularly. No clickbait, no bitterness. Just real stories: how I rebuilt trust after it was crushed by the people who should have protected it. How I reestablished boundaries without apologizing for them. How I started over after giving everything to people who acted like I was never there. One video I'll never forget was titled "Justice Doesn't Always Come from a Courtroom. Sometimes it comes from a door key only you hold." It reached over 300,000 views in a week. I'm not famous, but I'm present. Dylan's in first grade now. Every afternoon when I pick him up, he runs toward me with a glowing smile, always holding a scrap of paper, a crayon drawing of us standing in front of a house with a heart-shaped window. I tape them onto the fridge. Each time I look, I remind myself this is my family. No one gets to vote on whether it counts. Mom still texts now and then. Short, hesitant messages, usually on holidays. "How are you? Is Dylan doing well in school? I saw your new video. I didn't think you'd share so much." I don't hide from her. But I don't need her validation to move forward. I don't wait for an apology anymore. Instead, I hold firm to one rule: if someone wants to be in my life, they have to show up. Not by title, not by DNA, only by truth. In June, I received an invitation from a nonprofit that supports women facing financial abuse within families. They asked if I'd share my story as part of their new campaign, called The Quiet Cut, focused on the invisible wounds caused by phrases like "she's fine," "she's strong." I said yes. I told my story, not to expose anyone, but because I knew silence had once been the way they stripped me of power. Now words were how I claimed it back. One quiet evening, Dylan and I sat in the moss-green armchair in our living room. The window was open. A breeze drifted in. I could hear traffic humming in the distance and the faint smell of cookies from the downstairs apartment. I asked him, "When you grow up, do you think I'm strong?" He squinted thoughtful, then nodded, "Yeah. But I don't think you're someone who always pushes through. I think you know when to stop." I nearly laughed. 6 years old and already that wise. I nodded back. I used to push through a lot. But not anymore. Now I only stay where I feel real. Freedom, I've learned, isn't about shouting, "I was right" in a crowded room. It's sitting still, looking back at it all, and no longer seeing yourself in the role of the victim. I used to give in, stay quiet, and play the part of the good daughter. But now I'm the mother who knows her limits. The woman who chooses a life that doesn't require permission. To me, justice isn't about payback. Justice is not having to live quietly for anyone else ever again. It's writing your story in your real voice and walking forward without looking back. Emily's story is a reminder that sometimes the ones who hurt you don't need to scream. They just need to go silent at the right moment and quietly erase you from the narrative. But Emily refused to let that silence define her. She stood up, reclaimed her voice, not for revenge, but to live in alignment with her truth. In real life, justice isn't always a courtroom verdict. Sometimes it's the moment you stop sacrificing for those who never chose to stay. And in the end, freedom is knowing you don't need anyone's approval to believe you're worthy. What do you think of Emily's journey? What would you do in her place? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more raw, powerful stories about family silence and justice.